You ever get that sixth sense? The one that tells you something is off? Like when the neighbor's dog suddenly stops barking at midnight, or when your wife starts putting on perium just to work late at the office. That's how it began for me. In any normal American family, we convince ourselves it's just stress, the mortgage, the kids' soccer practice. Maybe she's tired of my same old dad jokes and my obsession with grilling steaks in the backyard. But deep down, under the suburban lawn and the perfectly trimmed hedges, I smelled something rotten. Not just garlic bread left in the fridge rotten, but betrayal rotten. The kind that sneaks up on you while you're sitting in your lazy boy, watching Monday Night Football, and realizing the woman you married might be playing in a whole different league. Now, let me tell you, American culture is funny when it comes to marriage. We put family photos everywhere, on the fridge, the mantle, the Christmas cards that we mail out bragging about our perfect lives. And my wife was the master of that illusion. She smiled in every picture, kissed me on the cheek at church, and laughed too loud at the neighbors' barbecues. But then she started whispering on her phone late at night, claiming it was her project manager, which, by the way, is American code for I'm lying through my teeth. And here's the kicker. She thought I didn't know. She thought she was smarter, that I was just the clueless husband with a beer belly and a subscription to ESPN. But the truth is, I grew up in a family where infidelity was practically genetic. My uncle ran off with a waitress, my cousin married 3 times before 30, and my mom, God bless her soul, always said, men cheat with their bodies, women cheat with their hearts. Little toxic love proverbs stuck in my head, and as soon as my wife started saying she was working late, I knew I was dealing with more than just overtime. I was dealing with betrayal disguised in business casual. So I played dumb. That's the part nobody tells you. When you're suspicious, don't explode, don't start yelling like some Jerry Springer guest. No, you play it cool, like a parody of yourself. I smiled, kissed her forehead, asked if she needed gas money, even offered to pack her lunch. She thought she was slick, but every lie she told added fuel to my little conspiracy theory. In fact, it got so entertaining that I began to imagine her secret lover wasn't just her ex from college, it was bigger. Maybe she was in some underground cheating cult. Maybe the Illuminati had branched into infidelity management. Maybe Tinder was just a front for global betrayal at 2 a.m. And while she was working, I sat in the dark like a private investigator, scrolling Reddit forums on cheating wives, sipping whiskey like I was about to solve Watergate all over again. Then one night I decided to test her. I casually asked, "So how's your ex doing these days?" Her fork froze mid-air like a glitch in the Matrix. She laughed nervously, muttered something about Facebook updates, and quickly changed the subject to whether we should repaint the garage. That was it. Confirmation. Only in American marriages can a discussion about garage paint be a cover-up for emotional infidelity. And right then I knew. I was living in my own thriller, only instead of spies and nuclear codes, it was love, cheating, and a family built on lies. Here's the ironic part. She probably thought she was protecting me, protecting the kids, protecting the American dream of the white picket fence. But what she didn't realize is that betrayal is like barbecue smoke. You can spray Febreze all you want, but it seeps into everything, into the furniture, into the family dinners, into the way you look at each other across the table. I started noticing every little detail, the way she dressed nicer on Tuesdays, the perfume that smelled like toxic love bottled up at Macy's, the way she hummed old songs from college days. And the craziest thought hit me. She wasn't just meeting her ex, she was time traveling. Every secret meeting was her way of rewinding back to the good old days, as if infidelity could buy her a second youth. Meanwhile, I sat back and thought, maybe I'm the villain here. Maybe the real conspiracy is that American marriage is just a long comedy sketch, one big parody where everybody cheats, but some of us are better at hiding it. But then I remembered, No, this is revenge territory now. This is the part of the movie where the quiet husband transforms into the man with a plan. She thought I didn't know, but I knew from the very first fake smile. And that knowledge, that betrayal, wasn't going to destroy me. It was going to fuel me. So I started documenting. Receipts, credit card statements, mileage on the car. I became my own FBI agent, except my case file wasn't about national security. It was about toxic love festering in my living room. Every shred of evidence was another nail in the coffin of her American romance with her ex. And while she was out there thinking she was starring in some Hallmark reunion special, I was writing the script for a revenge story that would make Quentin Tarantino proud. Because here's the truth. In this country, cheating isn't just about bodies. It's about trust. And when trust dies, family dies. And when family dies, the only thing left is betrayal and payback. And trust me, my move would make her regret everything. The funny thing about betrayal is that it never announces itself with fireworks or breaking news on CNN. No, it slides in quietly, like a cheap ad during late-night TV, promising you a miracle, but really selling snake oil. And my wife, bless her lying little heart, thought she was running some covert CIA-level operation of infidelity. What she didn't realize was that I had already become a full-blown conspiracy theorist, armed with coffee, paranoia, and Google Maps history. Every time she said she was at the office, I'd casually check the car mileage. Oh look, she drove exactly 17.4 miles, which just so happened to be the distance to a downtown cafe where couples sat too close in booths pretending the world didn't exist. I even started using the same apps teenagers use to stalk their crushes, find my iPhone, Venmo transactions, even the Starbucks rewards card. And the more I uncovered, the more ridiculous it became. She wasn't just sneaking around. She was sloppy, leaving breadcrumbs like Hansel and Gretel, except the trail didn't lead home. It led to betrayal. Now here's where it gets almost comedic. I followed her one evening. Not in the trench coat and fedora way, more like a suburban dad in a Dodge Ram, pretending I was running errands. She parked outside this hip little bar where the neon lights screamed midlife crisis. And there he was, her ex, the man, the myth, the washed-up college quarterback who peaked in 2002 but still wore leather jackets as if he were auditioning for a Netflix reboot nobody asked for. I watched them laugh over cocktails like two teenagers rediscovering toxic love, while I sat outside eating cold fries from the drive-thru, imagining I was in some detective movie narrated by Morgan Freeman. But here's the kicker. She looked happy. Not the polite American family photo happy she faked at Thanksgiving. Real, glow-in-the-eyes happy. And that's when the betrayal cut deeper. Because cheating isn't just about the physical. It's about the emotional affair, the infidelity of the soul. And as I sat there, spying like a paranoid ex-boyfriend, instead of her husband, I thought, maybe I've stumbled onto a bigger conspiracy. Maybe the American dream isn't about freedom or family or the white picket fence. Maybe it's just about lying convincingly enough that no one asks questions. So I started keeping notes. Not just she left at 7, came back at 11, but full-on case files, like I was preparing to submit this to the FBI's Betrayal Division. Subject spotted wearing red dress. Subject smiled excessively. Subject touched Subject B's arm 3 times. It was absurd, but it made me feel like I had control in a situation that was spiraling into chaos. And let's be real, Americans love control almost as much as we love reality TV. Then came the moment that flipped everything. One night, while she thought she was being clever, she left her laptop open. Rookie mistake. And let me tell you, the emails weren't just flirty. They read like a bad rom-com script. "You still make my heart race," she wrote, as if she were auditioning for The Bachelor, Infidelity Edition. And he replied with lines so cheesy I could smell the Velveeta through the screen. You'll always be my touchdown. I swear I almost vomited right there on the keyboard. This wasn't just cheating. This was a betrayal wrapped in cliches, dipped in toxic love, and sprinkled with midlife desperation. But here's where the parody writes itself. Instead of confronting her right then like any rational husband, I decided to dig deeper. What if this wasn't just about my wife and her ex? What if this was part of a larger American epidemic, a government experiment to see how much betrayal a man can take before he snaps? I mean, isn't it suspicious that nearly every show on Netflix is about cheating, revenge, or family secrets? Maybe Hollywood wasn't entertainment, it was programming. And I, the suburban husband, was their perfect test subject. So I leaned into the role. I started tailing her more aggressively, taking pictures from the corner booth at diners, blending in like some divorced uncle who drinks too much coffee. I even considered wearing a fake mustache, just to commit to the bit. My friends at the bar thought I'd lost it, but I told them this was bigger than me. This was about uncovering the hidden underworld of American infidelity. They laughed, called me Agent Revenge, and bought me another beer. But inside, I knew I was onto something. Because the truth is, she thought I didn't know. She thought she could juggle her toxic love affair with family dinners, PTA meetings, and our Sunday church routine. But I knew. I knew every move, every lie, every cheap excuse. And the more she played her role, the more I refined mine. I wasn't just a husband anymore. I was the director of a parody thriller. And she was the clueless lead actress in a film that was about to end in the most American way possible, with a dramatic reveal and a healthy dose of revenge. And as I drove home that night, evidence in hand, I didn't feel broken. I felt electric. Because this wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of hers. And she had no idea that her betrayal was about to become my masterpiece. There's a moment in every American marriage when the sitcom laugh track dies and the true crime soundtrack kicks in. For me, that moment came one Thursday night when I followed her again because apparently I had become a professional stalker, unpaid, fueled only by spite and Taco Bell. She said she had a late conference call. Right, because nothing screams business meeting like high heels and a little black dress. I parked across from the same neon-lit bar, the kind of place where toxic love blooms under bad lighting and cheaper wine. And there he was again, the ex. Let's call him Brad, because of course his name is Brad. Every cheating story in America has a Brad. He had that smug smirk, the kind only a man who still talks about his college football days can have. Watching them together was like watching a parody of young love, laughing too hard, leaning too close, like teenagers trapped in 40-year-old bodies. It wasn't subtle. This wasn't just cheating. This was betrayal, written in bold, neon letters. I sat there in my truck, munching on stale fries, narrating the scene in my head like I was hosting a true crime documentary. Here we see the American wife in her natural habitat of infidelity attempting to relive her glory days with the quarterback who never made it to the NFL. Little does she know her husband is outside, plotting revenge that will echo through the suburbs. If Netflix had been filming, I swear it would have made the top 10 list by Sunday. But here's the painful part. She looked alive. She looked free. And it hit me. She wasn't just betraying me. She was betraying our family, our kids, every Christmas morning we ever staged for Instagram likes. She wasn't sneaking around just for fun. She was chasing something. Youth, excitement, the thrill of being wanted. Meanwhile, I was at home, unclogging drains and paying the mortgage. That's the cruel math of infidelity. One person gambles everything for the adrenaline rush, while the other holds the entire family together with duct tape and sarcasm. Later that week, I found more evidence. She left her phone unlocked in the kitchen, and I, being the FBI agent I had now become, scrolled through her texts. My God, the messages were worse than the emails. I can't stop thinking about you. You make me feel alive again. And the pièce de résistance. He'll never understand me the way you do. That last line hit like a bullet. Not because it was true, but because it was lazy. Betrayal hurts less when it's at least creative. But this was cliché-level cheating, straight out of a bad soap opera. And then came the conspiracy theory. Because why stop at simple betrayal when you can expand the narrative into full-blown paranoia? Maybe Brad wasn't just Brad. Maybe he was part of a larger organization, the Brotherhood of Ex-Boyfriends. Maybe they held annual meetings in Vegas, trading notes on how to ruin marriages and recruit suburban wives into their cult of toxic love. Maybe my wife wasn't even his only project. I started imagining PowerPoint slides titled Operation Infidelity. Target suburban moms 35 to 45. Laugh all you want, but in America, if you don't turn your pain into a conspiracy, are you even coping? Still, beneath the jokes, there was a raw sting. Every smile she gave him was a knife. Every text she typed was another brick on the wall between us. I kept telling myself I'd confront her, but then I realized, why ruin the performance before the final act? If she wanted to play the cheating wife, I'd let her finish her role. I was just the director waiting for the perfect climax, the one that would make her regret everything. Revenge wasn't just about exposing betrayal. It was about timing, about building suspense until the moment the curtain fell and the audience gasped. And oh, did I plan. I saved screenshots, bank statements, GPS pings, even receipts from the bar. My laptop looked like a detective's murder board, red strings connecting dates, locations, and late-night lies. Any outsider would have thought I was solving a political assassination, but no. It was just the assassination of a marriage, death by infidelity. One night, staring at all the evidence, I laughed out loud. Not the normal, ha-ha funny laugh, but the manic laugh of a man who realizes he's living in a parody of his own life. This wasn't a tragedy anymore. This was theater. My cheating wife thought she was getting away with it, but what she didn't know was that I was turning her affair into a script so perfectly orchestrated that even Shakespeare would have called it too dramatic. And so I waited. Each night she slipped out, each excuse she rehearsed. I nodded and smiled, the perfect, clueless husband. Inside, I was rehearsing my own lines because the moment of truth was coming. The betrayal was real, the infidelity undeniable, the toxic love affair blooming in secret. But soon, very soon, I would flip the script. And when I did, she wouldn't just regret cheating, she'd regret ever thinking I didn't know. Here's the thing they don't tell you in marriage counseling. The most powerful weapon in revenge isn't rage, it's patience. Anyone can yell, throw dishes, or sleep on the couch for dramatic effect, but it takes a true artist of betrayal management to smile through dinner while your wife's phone buzzes with texts from Brad the permanent high school quarterback. And that's exactly what I became, an artist. A Picasso of passive-aggressive silence. She'd come home late, hair a little too messy, lipstick smudged like she'd been auditioning for some community theater version of Toxic Love, the musical. I'd greet her at the door with a kiss, ask how her meeting went, then offer her leftover lasagna. She thought she was fooling me. What she didn't know was that every casual, "Sure, honey," was another bullet loaded into my revenge chamber. I wasn't the clueless husband anymore. I was the director, the producer, and the star of my own reality show. Keeping Up with Infidelity. And here's where the parody got even juicier. I started going out of my way to act dumber, like the stereotypical American dad you see in sitcoms. I pretended to struggle with laundry, asked her how to boil pasta, even claimed I couldn't figure out the TV remote. She laughed, rolled her eyes, convinced herself I was too distracted to notice her double life. But behind that mask of incompetence, I was playing chess while she was playing tic-tac-toe. Meanwhile, my evidence folder kept growing thicker. Bank statements showed business dinners that were mysteriously charged at bars with names like Neon Moon and The Love Shack. Her gas receipts lined up perfectly with my GPS tracker app. And the pièce de résistance, an Uber ride she paid for, picking her up at our house and dropping her off exactly 3 blocks from Brad's apartment. If Infidelity had a Yelp page, I could have left a 5-star review for how obvious she made it. But revenge, my friends, is about more than just exposure. It's about psychology. It's about making the betrayer comfortable, making them dig their own grave while you hand them the shovel. So I leaned in. I told her she looked beautiful before her meetings. I slipped gift cards into her purse, saying she deserved a treat. Hell, I even encouraged her to work late more often, like I was her #1 fan. And the whole time, I was documenting, recording, building the case. Now, here's where the conspiracy theories really took off. At one point, I convinced myself she was part of a government pilot program called Operation Betrayal, designed to test how long a suburban husband could endure infidelity before either snapping or writing a memoir. Think about it. Why else would she be so reckless? Why else would the universe keep throwing me obvious clues? I imagined secret agents in black suits watching me from vans, taking notes on my coping mechanisms. And maybe they'd publish a case study in Psychology Today. Subject A endured 14 weeks of cheating before orchestrating the most elaborate revenge plot in suburban history. It got to the point where even the dog started looking at me differently. Every time she left the house, the dog gave me this pity stare, like, "Bro, you really gonna let this betrayal slide?" And I'd whisper back, "Not for long, buddy. Not for long." And because, yes, even the family pet became part of my infidelity surveillance system. Every bark, every whimper, I logged into my notes like a deranged scientist. But the best part, the absolutely delicious part, was watching her underestimate me. She'd brag to her girlfriends on the phone. I overheard while mowing the lawn, because Americans love multitasking yard work with eavesdropping. "He has no clue," she giggled. "I could tell him I'm running for president, and he'd probably believe it." Oh, sweetheart, if only you knew. Not only did I know, but I was plotting an elaborate finale that would make Watergate look like a high school prank. And here's where I flipped the script in my head. This wasn't a tragedy anymore. It was comedy. I stopped seeing myself as the betrayed husband and started seeing myself as a parody character, some hybrid of Sherlock Holmes and Jim Carrey. The more she lied, the funnier it became. The more she sneaked out, the more elaborate my revenge plan grew. At one point, I even considered renting a billboard downtown with her picture and the words, "Local woman discovers infidelity isn't a personality trait." Too much? Probably. But you can't blame a man for brainstorming. By now, my patience had transformed into power. Every secret rendezvous, every cliché love text, every whispered phone call in the garage, it was all fuel. Fuel for the moment when I'd pull the curtain back and let her see the performance she'd been unknowingly starring in. She thought she was the puppeteer pulling the strings of deception. But in reality, I had been holding the entire stage the whole time. And as I lay in bed one night, listening to her fake stories about deadlines and team projects, I smiled. Not because I believed her, but because I knew the end game was near. Revenge wasn't just coming. It was already here. It was in every fake smile, every nod of agreement. Every night I let her believe I was blind. Little did she know I wasn't just watching, I was waiting. Every thriller needs its climax, that one scene where the hero finally drops the mask and the villain realizes the game is over. For most American marriages, that moment comes in a lawyer's office, with tissues and custody schedules. But me? No, I had bigger plans. If betrayal was going to be the theme of this toxic love saga, then revenge was going to be the punchline. And it all came together on a Friday night. The kind of night when suburban families usually order pizza and binge Netflix. Instead, I staged my very own season finale. She left the house in her usual work meeting attire, black dress, red lipstick, perfume that smelled like midlife desperation in a bottle. I kissed her goodbye, told her to crush that presentation, and watched her car vanish down the street. Then I followed, of course, because by now tailing her was less of a hobby and more of a full-time job. She parked outside the same bar, met Brad, still in his leather jacket, still clinging to 2002, and they went inside laughing like high school sweethearts who had just discovered beer. This time, though, I was prepared. I filmed them from across the street, zooming in like I was filming an episode of Dateline NBC. Every laugh, every hand touch, every innocent kiss captured. Proof of infidelity in glorious HD. When they left, I stayed quiet, tailing them until I had enough footage to fill a documentary. Then I drove home, my heart pounding not from pain, but from anticipation. Tonight wasn't just another night of betrayal. Tonight was opening night for my revenge performance. When she walked back through the door around midnight, she wore that fake tired smile, the one she always used after long meetings. I had set the stage perfectly. Candles lit, dinner reheated, wine poured. Our living room looked like a scene from The Bachelor, Suburban Betrayal Edition. She hesitated, surprised by the romance. "Wow, you did all this?" she asked, her voice shaky. I smiled, pulled out a chair for her, and said, "Of course, you've been working so hard. You deserve it." And that's when I pulled the trigger, not a gun, but the TV remote. The big screen flickered, and there it was. Footage of her and Brad, hand in hand, lips locked, betrayal projected larger than life in our very own family room. She froze. The wine glass nearly slipped from her hand. Her face went pale, then red, then pale again, like she was speed running through all 5 stages of grief in under 30 seconds. I didn't yell. That's the part that scared her most. I just sat there, sipping my wine, watching the evidence play on loop. "I thought we could enjoy a little movie night," I said casually. "I call it Cheating Wife, the director's cut. What do you think? Oscar-worthy performance?" She stammered, reaching for excuses. "It's not what it looks like." Classic line. It's always what it looks like. She cried, begged, swore it was just emotional, that it didn't mean anything, that she loved me, loved our family. But the words bounced off like cheap rubber balls. Because betrayal isn't measured in kisses, it's measured in trust. And once trust dies, there's no CPR strong enough to bring it back. At one point, she dropped to her knees, tears streaming, whispering, "Please, don't ruin our family." That word, family, nearly broke me. But then I remembered the screenshots, the texts, the lies, the endless nights of pretending. She hadn't thought about family when she slipped into Brad's arms. She only thought about herself. And now, I was thinking about myself. So I leaned forward and whispered, "You thought I didn't know, but I knew everything. And now everyone else will too." I slid the manila folder across the table. Printouts of emails, screenshots, bank receipts, the whole infidelity case file. Her eyes widened as she flipped through, realizing just how long I'd been documenting her betrayal. Weeks, months, every detail accounted for, every lie exposed. It was then that she truly broke. The sobbing turned to shaking, the confidence melted into fear. Because she finally understood, this wasn't just about cheating. This was about consequences. In America, infidelity might win you a lifetime movie role, but in real life, it wins you divorce papers, custody battles, and a reputation that sticks harder than a bad Yelp review. I stood up, poured myself another glass of wine, and turned off the TV. "I hope it was worth it," I said, "because tonight the game ends." And with that, I walked upstairs, leaving her crumpled on the floor, drowning in regret. But don't get me wrong, I wasn't heartless. This wasn't just about destroying her. It was about reclaiming myself. Betrayal may have written the script, but revenge gave me the final word. And as I lay in bed that night, hearing her muffled sobs downstairs, I realized the most American truth of all. Sometimes the quietest moves are the loudest revenge. Morning came, and with it, the final act of my suburban Shakespearean drama. Sunlight poured through the blinds, cruelly cheerful, like the universe itself was mocking the ruins of what used to be our family. I walked downstairs to find her curled up on the couch, still in last night's dress, mascara smeared across her face like war paint gone wrong. She looked less like my wife and more like a contestant eliminated too early on The Bachelor Infidelity edition. She tried to speak, but I held up a hand. Don't. No more lies, no more half-truths, no more toxic love monologues. We're done. It was the kind of line you hear in a movie, but this wasn't fiction. This was the aftermath of betrayal, played out in the most American way possible. Divorce court, custody lawyers, and group chats buzzing with gossip. I didn't need to scream. I didn't need to throw things. My silence, my calmness was revenge enough. Because in America, nothing terrifies a guilty spouse more than a partner who doesn't yell. When you don't yell, it means you've already moved on to planning the execution. And my execution was simple: dismantle the life she thought was untouchable. By Monday morning, I had already met with a divorce lawyer, the kind who wore sharp suits and smiled like a shark smelling blood. He looked over my evidence, photos, receipts, videos, and said, "This is airtight. She won't get a dime more than necessary." Sweet music to my ears. He even joked we could make a Netflix special out of it. I laughed, because honestly, why not? Infidelity had become entertainment anyway. Word spread fast. In our tight suburban community, gossip travels quicker than Amazon Prime. Neighbors who once waved politely now whispered on their porches, eyes darting toward our house like it was a crime scene. PTA moms clutched their pearls. Dads avoided eye contact at Little League games. Everyone knew. And that was the real punishment. Not me leaving. Not the divorce papers. The real punishment was her reputation, shattered in a place where family image was currency. And Brad? Poor, pathetic Brad. He vanished the moment things got messy, ghosted her like a bad Tinder date. Turns out betrayal buddies don't stick around when the word lawyer enters the chat. She was left alone, holding the wreckage of her toxic love fantasy, realizing she had traded 20 years of family for a fling with a man who still bragged about prom night. I should have felt sad. I should have felt broken. But instead, I felt lighter. Revenge, it turns out, isn't always fire and fury. Sometimes it's simply walking away with your head held high while the other person drowns in regret. And she did regret it, every single day. I saw it in her eyes at the mediation table when she tried to smile through tears, when she begged for one more chance. But betrayal doesn't get second chances. Infidelity doesn't get do-overs. Here's where the parody part of my brain kicked in. As she cried about losing everything, I imagined a game show announcer's voice booming, "Congratulations, you've just won the grand prize of cheating on your husband. Say goodbye to your family, your reputation, and half your savings. Don't forget to take home our consolation prize, a lifetime of regret and the occasional Facebook memory to haunt you." The laugh track in my head was deafening. Of course, I wasn't heartless. I let her keep the car. Not out of kindness, but because every time she drove it, she'd remember the mileage that betrayed her. I kept the house, the kids, and the dog, the only loyal one in the whole mess. And when I sat on the porch with a beer, watching the sunset, I realized the truth. This wasn't the end of my life. This was the rebirth. The conspiracy theorist in me decided maybe this was fate. Maybe the government really had orchestrated Operation Betrayal just to see if I'd snap. Maybe the universe had cast me as the lead in a dark comedy about marriage, cheating, and revenge. Or maybe, just maybe, it was simpler than that. Sometimes love dies, sometimes family fractures, and sometimes the person you trust most becomes the villain in your story. And when that happens, you don't just survive, you rewrite the ending. So that's what I did. I rewrote it. She thought I didn't know. She thought I was blind, clueless, too wrapped up in sports and barbecue grills to see her infidelity. But I knew. And in knowing, I found power. Betrayal didn't break me. It made me sharper, colder, smarter. And my revenge wasn't in shouting or violence. It was in walking away, leaving her with nothing but her regret. The last time we spoke, really spoke, she whispered, "I wish I could take it back." I looked her in the eye and said, "You can't. That's the thing about betrayal. It can't be undone, only remembered." And then I left. And that was it. Curtain call. The suburban tragedy turned parody came to an end. Cheating, infidelity, toxic love, all of it behind me now. I had been betrayed, yes. But in the end, my move made her regret everything. And that, my friends, is the sweetest revenge of all.